Yes, good morning. I'm Reverend Skip, and I am your associate minister here at CSL. Don't we have the best place on earth right now? Wow. Thank you for the reminder. We're in store for an amazing treat today. We have a guest speaker, Jeffon Seely, here. We love that you're here, my brother. So grateful. Here at CSL, we have 7 core values. They are love, healing, oneness, abundance, spiritual growth, diversity, and service. Today, we're focusing on oneness. After prayer and meditation, asking God, what do I talk on? What do I speak about this oneness? And it downloaded into my spirit right away that all our core values are actually surrounded around oneness. Think about this. Love. We love it from a place of our oneness with everything. Our love comes from a oneness with God. Think about our healing. We can only heal when we're willing to connect with the healing that's within us. That's oneness. And when we get to our abundance comes from our connection of oneness with prosperity, with abundance that lives within us. Spiritual growth is all about understanding our connection to the divine. And when we begin to serve, we serve from a place of you are me, I am you, we're one. In diversity, we think about this, that we are the unique emanation of the one, not the 2, not the 3, but the one. And as you show up, that is the divine way you were meant to show up. So this week, and I hope every week you take the core value for the week and you contemplate it. Think about this. Look for the oneness everywhere that you go. Look for the oneness in everything that you experience this week. I promise you, you will have a different outlook. It will change your life. Very excited to bring up our speaker, our guest speaker. Now, if you don't know Jeffon, you must get on YouTube and see what this brother does. What I love about him is that he has brought to the forefront this conversation about inclusivity. And for me, you've heard me talk about this from the pulpit. Being a black man in America, sometimes you don't feel so safe. But we're starting this conversation where we're bringing everyone to the table. Just be hungry for love. Everyone can come and be a part of the conversation. Let me read just a little bit about what he's done in the world. Jeffon Seely is a national speaker and a workshop facilitator. He has a workshop today, so I hope you're going to sign up and get into that workshop. Jeffon is recognized as the leading resource in the field of diversity, inclusivity, generations, and mindfulness and leadership. He has assisted corporations, nonprofit organizations, governments, academic institutions for innovative ways to bring in this conversation of inclusivity. He's been named one of the emerging spiritual leaders of our time by Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith. So one thing that I saw during the pandemic, every week he was online helping us to get through. He was on Facebook, and the things that he dropped into our consciousness really helped to shift my life. So right now, I want you to give Jeffon a warm CSL Fort Lauderdale welcome.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I think I overdressed. I mean, it's like 80 degrees out there. I'm walking to the car, dripping sweat, but it's okay. So I was told at the beginning of our time here today that I actually had the luxury of speaking 8 hours. So I hope that you're, no, I'm just joking. Okay. It is a true, wonderful privilege, honor to be here with your community. I was mentioning to Rev Skip, I haven't had the privilege to be in a community like this for quite some time. Instead, I'm I'm behind the screen looking at a small little camera on my computer working with a variety of individuals. So it is so great to be here in this community, meeting so many individuals, seeing some familiar faces, and it's my hope here today, over the course of the 20 plus minutes that I will have the privilege to share with you, unless you join the workshop after, to remind you of something specific, something practical that you can begin to apply to your life to make a shift in transformation. The variety of things that I may mention during our time here today, some of them may not necessarily align, and that's quite all right. In fact, I encourage everybody here to question everything that I say. I cannot stand up here and act as if I know something that you do not. Instead, I can simply recognize that there have been circumstances in my life that has provided me with an opportunity to venture into the caverns of my mind, my spirit, and my soul, and perhaps recognize some things that I can share with you such that we collectively can begin to shift and shape the world that we share together. So please be willing to not just listen to these ideas and continue to accumulate these intellectual bricks of knowledge that we probably all have overflowing in our conscious minds. You know those intellectual bricks of knowledge that I'm talking about when we open a book and say, that was such a powerful idea, and it just goes into the storehouse. We're not really applying it to anything. But instead, listen specifically to something that may align with you, so that you can begin to make this shift and transformation in your own life. If you are willing to do that, would you please say yes? Yes. All right, fantastic. And with that, I'm done. No, I'm just joking. So I woke up this morning and heard the waves outside where we were staying, my wife and I. Thought about the sun that was shining down. Last night as I was watching the sunset, I simply began to recognize that as the sun sets on some, it begins shining on others who are awaiting the preciousness of a new day. Reminding this oneness, as Reverend Skip talked about. The connection that we share with everything and everyone. And when I was getting ready here today, I just simply started thinking about the breath that I have the privilege to take. The breath that we all have the privilege to take. Have you recognized the miraculousness of that breath that you are taking in this moment of now? You see, I've been traveling down this spiritual path now for about 15 years. I stumbled upon it when I was 2. No, I'm not 17. But it was about 15 years ago when I began traveling down this path. And I'll share a little bit of my story here in just a moment. But there's been something miraculous that has been continuously standing out to me as I've been venturing down this unique path for myself. And that is the recognition of how incredible this life that we are sharing with one another truly is. If we stop for a moment and simply bring into the forefront of our conscious mind all of the things that are aligning with precision to enable us to be here, sharing this present moment with each and every one of us. Whether those individuals who are here a part of this center, or the individuals that you see on the street, or the people who are on the other side of the world. This miraculous golden thread that is weaving through it all. As we stop in this moment, we think about that abundant sun that is shining down from above. We think about this earth that we are sharing with one another that is spinning and orbiting in such a divine and harmonious way. The trees that are reaching towards the light, the seeds that are slowly awakening to their own inherent greatness as they are resting in soil that has been accumulating nutrients since the beginning of time. Think about the human beings that we have the privilege to share this time with. All of us, a universe that is existing within ourselves. The breath that we are breathing, our heart that is beating, our blood that is flowing, our lungs that are expanding. The cells that are dividing, the atoms that are thriving. So I share all of that with you to encourage all of us to pause periodically and recognize the synchronicity, the divine alignment of everything in our experience. We are not separated from that which enables us to simply be. You see, the one thing that stands out is the realization that we truly are empowered by the one. And when we have the privilege to see another human being, they are reflections of the one. So perhaps that is something that we can gather, carry with ourselves as we move forward and begin to look at everybody from those divine eyes and recognize the sacredness that we are sharing with each other. Now, if that is the spiritual philosophy and principles that we discuss, this idea of oneness, this idea of the divine connection, this idea that we can use our thoughts, our choices, and our actions to assist in creating the life that we are experiencing. Why does it seem that so often we forget to recognize those fundamental truths and apply them in our everyday experience. What causes us to forget? What causes you to forget? You see, if it was just so simple that all we had to do was read a book or understand a philosophy, then everything would be transformed. But it is not this static type of approach. It is something that once we recognize it internally within our minds, our hearts, our spirits, our being, it must become a way of operating in our day-to-day experience. And as you all are well aware, each moment is a new gift for which we can choose to do whatever we would like to do with it. And it's fascinating because it's very easy for us to embrace these philosophies from a selfish mode and simply say, well, what can I begin to accumulate in my life? What type of abundance and prosperity could I invite into my experience? And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is something, from my perspective, it's more than just recognizing what we can do within our individual lives to begin to transform our experience, and more to do with what can we begin to embody? How can we begin to show up to start shifting this world that we share together? Are we willing to do that? Or are we going to look at some of the realities that our brothers, our sisters, our fellow human beings are experiencing on this planet and simply cover up under the blanket of spirituality because we are afraid to look at some of those harsh realities that are very real in the lives of so many? And I'm sure if we had time, all of us would have a story about a harsh reality that we're experiencing, that we've experienced, or that somebody we love is currently going through. So what would begin to happen if we recognize this light of conscious awareness and begin to embody it to transform not only our lives, but begin to bring this towards the lives of other individuals? And I guess this is the philosophy or the ideation when people say that we're here to create a world that works for everybody. And notice how that message is one. It is inclusive. It's not saying those who look like us, those who speak the same language as us, those who come from the same background as us. Perhaps in order to create a world that works for everybody, we have to begin individually to recognize how we've been creating a world that does not work for everybody. And that takes courage. As many of you are probably well aware, it is very easy to kind of skim along the surface, embracing the ideas from this philosophy that align with us at the moment, but don't always push us deeper unless we have the courage, confidence, and conviction necessary to take that light of conscious awareness and start going into the subconscious or unconscious realm to begin illuminating areas of our life that we've ignored, that we've suppressed, or that we've simply overlooked. And so as I begin this conversation about this idea of oneness, then perhaps the greatest thing that we can do is not only transform our life, and as we know, when we transform our lives, we show up in the world differently and we start sending those ripples out into our community. So that's a great place to start. But can we all pause periodically and begin to recognize the impact that we are making in the lives of those individuals who we happen to be around day in and day out, and even those individuals who may be 2 or 3 or 4 degrees removed from ourselves? Understanding we are always sending these ripples out into the universe. So this has been on my mind, right? So that's the morning, right? That's the morning for me. And I'm just thinking, am I doing it? And what has prevented me from doing that? And how can I stand up and speak and share my message with individuals such as yourselves, with organizations, with corporations? Am I really doing the work? Or am I just simply masquerading around with this idea of vanity and ego that is propelling in front of me, that makes me feel as if I have something revolutionary to say, when I truly believe all of us have something revolutionary to say? Even those individuals in this room who don't necessarily speak as freely or openly as others, you too have something miraculous to share. So from my perspective, the one thing that has hindered me, and in conversations with a variety of other individuals, seemed to be the main hindrance in their experience in terms of embodying this philosophy that we discuss, is the self-image that we've assisted to co-create within our own minds. And as I like to say, we all have a variety of memories that are flowing through our consciousness, whether we're aware of them or not. And at times, unfortunately, we mismanage our memories, and those mismanaged memories cause confusion and frustration, and we're unaware that from that state of confusion and frustration still plays a role in the assistance of our co-creation. You see, I like rhyming a little bit. Have you been managing your memories properly? What are the things that you continuously focus on day in and day out? And I know for myself, and this is where I'll share just a little bit about me. I was mismanaging my memories and allowing them to become the foundational elements of the way that I saw myself that prevented me from showing up in this world authentically. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. So, me, grew up in this unique part of this country, Salt Lake City, Utah. The next question, I know everybody had, go ahead. What the question? Are you? Skip, thank you. Growing up, I was. However, I no longer am, and this is an important point. However, I still have family members and friends who practice the Mormon religion, and I've recognized in my experience it is not my job to run around the mountain and tell people what path they should follow. Because when I look deep enough, I recognize that all paths up the mountain lead the same way. So can I recognize the sacredness of every path, even if it's not one that necessarily aligns with me at this moment? So growing up in Utah, my mother was adopted from Scotland. My father is African American. My grandparents were on a building mission. You know how, I don't know if you've ever seen those missionaries who come and knock on your door. Can I tell you about the Church of Jesus Christ? Anyways, but my grandfather and grandmother were on a building mission in England. There are such sacred things that have aligned in all of our lives that have enabled us to be here today, whether it's our parents or our grandparents or our great-grandparents, going all the way back through the history of our ancestry, whose lives were absolutely essential in the development of who we are today. And for all of those individuals, regardless of how they may have shown up in the world, still should embrace this idea of gratitude towards those individuals, because without them, we would not simply be. And the golden thread, that oneness, is flowing through all of them, or has flowed through all of them. But on the building mission, my grandmother was unable to have children. So they adopted my mom and my aunt in England and my mom in Scotland. And I often sit back and think how my grandparents were led to this specific orphanage. And they walked in there and they saw this little girl who wasn't almost two at the time. And something must have drew them towards her, right? And they go over there and they grab her and they bring her back here. They did so legally. It's not just a snatch and run. Brought her back here. I had to clarify that. They brought her back here with the hopes that in doing so, they would provide this young girl with an opportunity for her life to unfold. And perhaps if this young girl happened to have children when she got older, which she did, so too would those children have fertile soil for which their lives could begin to blossom and develop. And I think about on the opposite spectrum. My grandmother on my father's side was from Jackson, Mississippi. My grandfather from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And I think about the difference in terms of the ways in which those two grandparents, my grandparents, grew up. It's just baffling. And so I share that just to have some humility with the experiences that we've all gone through. And some of them we may not necessarily be able to experience, but at least we can approach conversations, relationships from this ideation that perhaps I can give them the benefit of the doubt or see the oneness or the light that is shining within them. So in Salt Lake City, my parents went their separate way, nothing, out of the ordinary. But when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I started seeing things that some children I don't think should. My mom at that time started slipping down this very slippery slope of drugs and abuse and addiction and just failing to recognize the light that my sisters and I could see shining within her. And this happened, this was taking place for over 15 years. And so I was raised with my grandparents because my father and I didn't really have a relationship. And in this unique part of Salt Lake City, I began to look out into the environment and recognize that things didn't really match up. First and foremost, everybody in that community, nobody looked like me. And I know maybe the light's hitting me differently, but there is a slight different tint of skin here. On top of that, my grandparents supported us with a very small Social Security check. And as I like to say, we had T-shirts, we had clothes and things of that sort, but that little polo horse just ran off the side. So I just showed up in a T-shirt, you know? And when you're in a community where everybody idolizes that little horse, then suddenly you don't feel like, okay, something's going on here. I mean, we're shopping at that time, Fred Meyer, you know, like buy 5 shirts for $3 or something. And then I started thinking, as I got older and looking out, there were individuals who perhaps unconsciously were placing a limit, a glass ceiling upon my potential. And I remember walking into a Sunday school class one day, and this was the reason why my grandma said I do not have to go to the Mormon church anymore. And there was a saying on the chalkboard. And I say this not so you can say, oh, how bad, but just to tell you the experience. It said, no N-words allowed. And it was my sister and I who were the only kids of color. And I remember telling my grandmother this, and this was the first time that a white woman from central Utah actually experienced racial discrimination. Because somebody who she loved was being put in this area, this small little box, and in sharing that with the leader of the church, they didn't do anything about it, so on and so forth. I mean, words, they say sticks and stones can break bones, but words can never hurt. But I think that that's quite a lie, especially if we don't look at those words from a unique perspective in our own mind. We start embodying the words that people say to us, and then it becomes a fabric of who we believe we are. And I would never forget, my grandmother said, you know, the opinions of somebody do not have to become your reality. And that was something I had to come face to face with. And I share all of this with you because those are the things that began to really unfold in the way that I saw myself, my own self-image. And as this philosophy teaches and reminds us, the way that we see ourselves in here dictates the way that we show up out here. And also the way that we see ourselves in here tends to dictate and determine the way that people respond to us. Have you experienced that? Wherever you go, there you are. And people will reflect back to you, perhaps the ways that you see or believe to be true about yourself. And so I was in Seattle, and yes, I graduated from high school barely and went to college in Seattle. One of the best decisions I ever made. And I reunited with my dad there. And in this reuniting with my father, I began to recognize a few very important things. First and foremost, we should never point a finger of guilt and shame or blame at another individual because most people are doing the best that they can do from the space that they are at. Yes. And secondly, regardless of what somebody may be going through, we always have the ability to show them love and compassion. So my mother, as she was slipping down that slippery slope, doesn't matter if she was right there, I could still send love and compassion towards her. And I'll never forget, in Seattle, my dad had one of these spiritual friends. I do that because I'm one of those spiritual friends now. I don't know if you're one of those spiritual friends in some of your relationships. You know those people who are like, there's no spot where God is not. Everything is happening in divine order. And it's very easy for somebody to say that, an entirely different thing when you're going through something very real. And I'm listening to my father's friend who's sharing this with me, and I'm thinking, are you dumb? Do you not see the experience that I've just gone through? My grandmother and grandfather just passed. I'm in Seattle. My sisters are still in Salt Lake with nobody to remind them that they are queens and that they have a unique light within them. My mother has relapsed again and is continuing through this cycle of addiction. And I'll never forget, he shared a book with me. And books are quite powerful But there's a miraculous act that all of us have to do if somebody gives you a book. And I'm going to show it to you here. When you receive a book, if you are willing to open it, that's the first key. You have to open it, okay? And I know some of you out there have many books that you've opened but haven't really explored past like page 5 or 10. You have to read. And then you look at these lines and you kind of piece them together and you find things that align with you. And if you go through a book, then perhaps there's something that you can apply to your life and not just accumulate those intellectual bricks of knowledge that aren't going to do anything. So perhaps that's a revolutionary act we can do, is that book that's sitting on your shelf for quite some time, give it an opportunity, open it up. But anyways, so I opened the book after a few months. And this book, some of you have probably heard of, some of you maybe not. And it is a book entitled A Course in Miracles. And I'll never forget the first line that I read. It said, "The real cannot be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." And it was at that time that in the doorways of my conscious mind, something began to open, and I started looking back at my experience and thought, maybe everything was aligning with such precision to enable me with this opportunity to be here in this moment. And even those seemingly difficult paths that I may have called curses were actually the abundant stepping stones that were set before me so that I could step on them and be transformed in the way that I was showing up in the world. And so I encourage all of you, as you look back at your story, as you look at the materials that you've used to construct the way that you see you, not the way that the world sees you. I mean, I can put on this and act like everything's fine, but you can't see what's going on within my mind or within my heart. So I encourage us to take that powerful journey from the mind to the heart to the being and begin to look at the materials, the raw materials that we have used to construct the way that we see ourselves. And perhaps some of those are because of mismanaged memories. But perhaps more importantly, we can begin to look at the low, dark valleys of despair and fear, the high mountain peaks of joy, happiness, abundance, and prosperity, and start recognizing the one thing that has always been with us, and that is the divine. That is a sacred essence and energy that enables us to be. It is that which enables our atoms to exist, our cells to divide, our lives, our being to thrive. So as I share this, people often say, Jeffon, okay, well that sounds good, but how do I do it? And you know, in America, we're very like, how to do it. I mean, what behaviors do I need to implement to actually begin to see this shift in my life? And I'll say this very quickly. If we are solely focused on behavioral modifications without addressing the root causes that fuel our behaviors, those new behaviors will be very short-lived before we revert back to old habitual patterns within our minds, because nothing in here has shifted. And if it was easy as a few behaviors, I mean, there's a Google. There's no shortage of behaviors on Google. You could just type in whatever you want to do. But it's not A, B, C, D. It's more so what has to shift within my mental state. What has to shift in terms of my perspective and the outlook of the world, in terms of the way that I'm showing up, in terms of my beliefs. What do I actually believe to be true? So how do we begin to at least catch ourselves and start recognizing that foundation so we open the doorway to a pathway of possibility and transformation? There was a miraculous thing that occurs for all of us. Our heart is beating and we are breathing. Both of these things occur in this present moment. Now, I went to school for accounting, so hold on to your seats because here comes some numbers, okay? You know how accountants are, they're great speakers. This is day number 346 of the year 2021. The average human takes roughly 25,000 breaths each and every day. That means you and I have had the sacred privilege to take roughly 8.6 million breaths this year. Of all those sacred breaths that have been flowing through you, how many have you been aware of, fully connected to, conscious not only of the lungs that are breathing, but the essence that enables you to take that breath. I encourage you to pause often and recognize even 100 of those breaths. The second naturally occurring phenomenon is our heart that beats 100,000 times on average per day. When was the last time that you felt your heartbeat? Not feeling it, but actually sat there and felt your body with the heart that is beating within you. Would everybody please just put your hand on your heart? Let us take a deep breath in, send it out. Another breath in, send it out. At any given moment, we can pause, recognize that we are living, feel our heart that is beating. This year, 34 million heartbeats. And most of us are so busy going from thing to thing to thing, trying to manifest this, manifest that we forget that we're even living. And I know some of you are like, no, Jeffon, look, I was walking up some stairs the other day. Boy, did I breathe and feel my heartbeat. But pause periodically and recognize that breath. So, to bring us to kind of a close here, recognize the oneness. All of the things that are aligned with precision to enable you to be. Be grateful. It's very difficult to be grateful and appreciative and negative at the same time. One of them will tilt the scale within our minds. Be willing to move towards that ideation or idea of gratitude. Let it become the bedrock of your experience. Be willing to look at those ways, those elements that you've used to construct your foundation, your self-image. Don't feel angry, mad, or ashamed at anything that you've built. It's exactly what's supposed to be up to this moment of now, but we have the ability to use our tools that we've come equipped with to help recreate the life that we are living. We're walking around every day with these unique paintbrushes. Each day is a blank canvas. Those paintbrushes that we all carry but often are completely unaware that we have tucked in our back pocket is the paintbrush of our thoughts, our emotions, our choices, and our actions. All of these things only you can direct and control. The thoughts that flow through your mind empower or fuel the emotions that you experience. The choices that we commit to and the actions that we follow through on become those paintbrushes that we can use to color the canvas of life any way that we choose. Be willing to create something incredible, something that reflects your true calling, that sacred essence that is dwelling within you. And as we do this, please be willing not to just keep and hoard this information for yourself with the hopes of only developing something in your experience, but be willing to do your part to make your communities better, your cities better, your nation better, our world better. Because the shift that occurs within us begins that shift that occurs in the world that we happen to find ourselves in. To end here, a very simple poem that I like to share. Isn't it strange that princes, princesses, kings, and queens, and those that run around in rings, and then there's folks like you and me, see all are builders for eternity. For each is given a book of rules, a block of stone, and a bag of tools. We shape this rock as time has flown. We create stumbling blocks or stepping stones. Napoleon Hill says, "O divine providence, I ask not for more wisdom, I ask not for more riches, but for more wisdom with which to make better use out of the riches you gave me at birth, consisting in my ability to direct and control my mind to whatever ends I desire." You, me, we are it. And we are the ones that we have been waiting for. Today, this week, this month, the rest of this year, and beyond, be willing to share your light. And as you do, recognize the sacred light of everybody who you have the privilege to be around. Thank you. Many blessings. And so it is.
Oh, my goodness. My brother. Oh, man. Oh. If you don't know, now you know. Yeah. Something else that we have in common, I didn't realize, my brother. When I was a junior in high school, I was a rebellious Baptist. And I told my mama, I'm not going to church anymore. And she said to me, yeah, you are. I don't care where you're going to church, you're going someplace. So I then joined the Church of Latter-day Saints. I did. A friend of mine, Mormon in high school, said, come on, you might like this. I had an awakening when I was the 0.001% of black Mormons in the world. And I had a moment in prayer and meditation, and I heard, you don't truly believe this. Do you really believe these teachings? What do you really believe? It was in meditation I had an awakening. I had an honesty moment. Allowed myself to come back to that place where Jeffon was talking about that journey from the mind to the heart. See, in my head, I can create any scenario where I am the victor or the victim to suit the purpose. But when I'm honest in my heart, there is only the truth. So now we get to go into meditation to be honest with ourselves. How can we make a difference upon this planet? How can we get out and shift the world around us? Because it is possible.
I breathe out, I breathe in, I am still, I go within. When I quiet my mind, in the stillness I find. Spirit meets me there, Spirit meets me there.
So it is the time that we get to take a pause. We get to remember the heartbeat, remember the breath, remember the oneness. Remember all these qualities that are within us. See, we can only connect with spirit through spiritual practices. So in this time, I invite you to take in whatever you received from Jeffon. Take into your meditation to be aware and to wake up to your divine self. Let's meditate. So it's through this meditation that we become more of who we're meant to be. This shift begins with us. It's an internal, personal awakening. And as we wake up, we then shift the rest of the world. But it begins with ourselves.
I breathe out, I breathe in, I am still, I go within. When I quiet my mind, in the stillness I find. Spirit meets me there, Spirit meets me there.
So we all have a meditation card on our chair. Yours is the same as mine, so let's read it together. Here's our affirmation card. Yin and yang are both necessary to wholeness. I stand ready to give and receive. So let's know this together. Oh, I am so grateful for this day. So grateful for this time we get to gather together as a community, as a family, as loved ones. I'm so grateful for this beautiful, deep message from Jeffon today. I'm so grateful that we get to go deep within ourselves and to know that we have the ability to shift ourselves and transform this planet. Knowing that the one power, the one presence I call love is active everywhere. There is no spot that God is not, and I am a living proof of that. And each and every one of us has an opportunity to stand up in the place of oneness. So I give thanks. I give thanks for this day, knowing that it is a great day that we can take this message that we have learned from our hearts and we can magnify it as a living presence of the one. So I know today is a good day. It is a beautiful day. It is a divine day. And I simply say, and so it is. Amen, amen. Thank you so much, Facebook. We will be here next week, 10:30, same time. God bless everyone. Be well and be blessed.
Thank you for watching, and thanks for supporting CSL. If you'd like to know more about us, check us out on our website or social media. Blessings.